Like a lot of people, I've had a book in me and I've written some drafts. There's a lot of words, but no outcome, meaning there's no actual book. And so all these years, I've kind of become frustrated by the idea that I haven't written this book. Even though in some cases I've actually had the time to really sit down and write the book, it really hasn't happened. All in all, it just is like, okay, well, maybe I'm not meant to write a book. But in the end, I thought, okay, well, here's Jarvis, which is basically AI, and it can actually help me create the output that I want. Meaning I could write 3 times, 4 times, maybe 10 times faster with Jarvis to help me, like a writing assistant. Now, why did I choose 5 days? I thought, okay, well, here's a free trial. What if somebody could produce a book in 5 days for free? That would be pretty cool. Now, for a lot of people, this seems like a huge stretch. And one of the obstacles is, okay, are you just going to go ahead and write a book and come up with something that's actually just garbage because you have this intense need to just create something within 5 days, right? In the end, Jarvis isn't for everybody, but there's a way to figure out if it's right for you. You know, as is typical with a content creator, a lot of times, you get into the creation process and the organizational part kind of takes a back seat. Some of us just don't have the organizational bone in our body to, go about doing that naturally. I thought Jarvis did really well at kind of like outlining my thoughts and kind of pushing me in directions I might not have thought of otherwise. I came up with new ideas with Jarvis. Like, for example, it would come up with, let's say, something that said, daydreaming is bad, you need to stay focused, and so on. And I was like, no, daydreaming is good. And it made me delve into of letting your mind wander and daydream and so on. It actually got me to include a chapter on that in the book that I'm writing. Now, Jarvis as an AI is much like a regular writer in that it'll produce a bunch of content, but not all of that content is going to be good. So you still have to massage through Jarvis, end up deleting content and having it do it over again, or taking parts of content that were good and, trashing the other stuff. So it's a process of kind of massaging the content, much like you would normally when you're just writing things out. You're not going to produce great results all the time, and Jarvis doesn't either. But when you recognize that and you go through, you can actually have Jarvis kind of bounce ideas off of Jarvis. And that's exactly why I created a recipe, which you can get down below for free when you sign up for this series on Jarvis. That recipe is one of the primary components I find to basically jumpstart any sort of process. So whether you're writing a book with Jarvis or just blog posts, social media posts, or anything, you really want to jumpstart that process with a recipe. You want to be focused on what you're going to be doing during that free trial so you get the output you want. And a recipe is one of the primary ways to make that happen. You do need to fact check Jarvis. I found that Jarvis would come up with a quote about something, and the person that said the quote didn't exist, and so the quote was meaningless. And in that sense, that's a dangerous part of Jarvis. Still, I think Jarvis helps you clarify your message a bit further and flesh it out in a way you might not otherwise. It's not going to think in the same way as you, which is a benefit and a drawback. So initially, it will basically go and help you organize your thoughts a little more effectively. Have you word things a little bit differently. There's a cool feature in there where you can have it reword things like as a 5th grader would understand it. And having that output is helpful because it helps you reshape your wording in a way you might not otherwise. And that clarity is huge when you're doing copywriting or you're doing social media and you only have so many characters. That can be hugely beneficial. Jarvis is great for creating in short spurts, but it can sometimes, after a little bit, go off in a wild tangent, and it's like that squirrel moment where it just goes off in a wild tangent to something completely different and not related to what you're writing at all. It does have those moments, which is kind of funny in a way, but it can be frustrating too. Still, you just end up deleting, have it do another output, and keep on going. So what's cool about Jarvis will give you back output, and you'll realize in some cases that your question wasn't synthesized enough, it wasn't crystallized enough, or the input that you gave wasn't specific enough for Jarvis to create some output. So it's a situation where really going back and making sure that your questions or your original content are specific enough to get output that you really want from Jarvis. Now, Jarvis is great about writing about how-to content, about marketing, and really towards copywriting, things like that. So if you have a book in you that's more how-to oriented or marketing oriented, if your book is like that, it'll definitely help you nail down that book in no time. Just like anybody else, Jarvis has a certain characteristic, and although it'll change and adapt a little bit, my thought was, let's say you create a book and it's 70% created by Jarvis and 30% by you. Did your character or your personality actually come across in the book still? Meaning, do you drown out your character or personality, which might attract more people, and you become more generic sounding by using Jarvis? What I mean by that is, I think in a lot of cases, by putting yourself into your book, you are actually creating something a little more unique. And by using Jarvis or some of these online tools that write for you, your voice, that voice that you use to create your content, could be lost by that creation process. I'm not saying that it will. This could be something that that's not true. But I do find it interesting to see where the more people that use content creation tools like Jarvis, there are outputs, the blog posts all kind of look similar. It's like when someone goes and uses ClickFunnels for a website. They use that same template, and you can see the website and you know instantly that that site was created by WordPress or by ClickFunnels or by Wix. There's a certain flavor and characteristic, and these designs become very usual. It's almost like there's this templated style within AI written content that washes out the uniqueness of voice itself. In some cases, not using tools like Jarvis to create will actually keep that voice. Now, I don't know if this is a concern. It's just something that came up, and I thought, I wonder if that's the case, where you would actually wash out your personality, so to speak, by using Jarvis to write your content. Of course, I don't know the answer. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below your thoughts on, the dangers of using AI. Are we going to get taken over, so to speak, by AI when we start integrating it with our content creation process? Do we start to think like AI in that respect because we start to imbibe the language that AI uses instead of our own? I think that there is some conspiracy to that. I don't think it's something you have to worry about. In fact, I was watching a documentary on AlphaGo. It was the basic program, and then the program used iterations to create itself. So the AI ended up creating its own algorithms to get better at the game of Go.
And we first initially get AlphaGo to mimic the human player. And then through self-play and reinforcement learning, it plays against different versions of itself many millions of times and learns from its errors.
The technology's at the heart of AlphaGo. They're what are called deep neural networks, which essentially mimic the web of neurons in the human brain. It's a very old idea, but recently, due to increases in computing power, these neural networks have become extremely powerful, almost overnight.
Go found a way to learn how to play Go. Learning is the key thing here. It's machine learning.
The whole beauty of these types of algorithms is that because they're learning for themselves, they can go beyond what we as the programmers know how to do.
In fact, the top player of Go even said, I think I have the intuitive human capability to beat this AI machine, because it will never have that aspect of itself. Even though they've created this AI to play Go, it's still not technically artificial intelligence. Now, if you look at Jarvis, they're a lot further down on the tier of AI than the AlphaGo. These iterations of AI are not truly AI. I know some people will be offended by that, especially the creators of Jarvis itself. But Jarvis is mixing and curating different content together. And it is interesting that for what it produces. But I don't think you need to fear it taking over your mindset. It will influence. I do think it influences. Just like if you were to write or create with another person, how they create kind of influences how you create over time. So there is that influence there. But I don't think it's a danger of AI actually taking you over, so to speak. But it is a gateway drug, so to speak, to other elements of AI. But so is a phone and everything that you use, navigation and so on. So those are also very dangerous in terms of taking over your brain or reducing the capability of your brain to make connections that it made otherwise. It suddenly hamstrings you to rely upon a tool. And Sure, AI might get into that in some respects, but I think it's a matter of consciously creating with Jarvis or these tools in a way where you keep your voice or character intact. And I think that's an ongoing dynamic that you kind of have to play with. I don't think there's any real answer to the question of how you do that. I think there is a danger of relying on it too much, just as if you rely upon your phone to get somewhere instead of a map or instead of thinking about which roads you need to take. It's use it or lose it within your creative capacity. And so I do think that's interesting. Well, what do you think? Let me know in the comments. Look at the books written by Jarvis. They are average about 50 or 60 pages. And in my ideal mind of a writer, I don't consider that necessarily a book. But then I was like, well, why don't I consider that a book? It's 50 or 60 pages long. Who cares how long it is? If it were 500 pages, what a bargain, right? But you have to slog through those 500 pages. So if someone was able to take a 500-page book and boil it down to 50 pages, wouldn't you want to read the 50-page book rather than the 500? Obviously, integral to that question is the idea of transformation. If you're still able to give a person transformation from reading your book, if it's shorter, that brevity helps both you and them. It usually takes a lot more time for you to boil that down into a condensed format. And oftentimes you'll have books that are 500 pages, which certainly shouldn't be 500 pages. But still the question of length comes up in terms of quality as well. When people see a 50 or 60 page book, instantly, even though they shouldn't, they think, okay. And the danger of this is, okay, well, what is a book? And in fact, when you do some quick searches on this, you'll find that some people say the average business book is 100 pages in length. I asked Jarvis the question, what's the average length of a nonfiction book? And Jarvis came up with 100 to 250 pages. I thought that was interesting. But what's also interesting is a couple of different sources mentioned that the best-selling books over the last 7 years have gone down in length by 42%. Now, personally, what I think a lot of what's driving that is this influx of Amazon Kindle books. What's cool is reading a book that's only 50 or 60 pages in length and getting a transformation. What's not cool is subscribing to Amazon Prime books and getting these fluff books. I'm sure if you've been on Amazon, you've done that. It's $10 for the month, and you can read all these books unlimited. A lot of these books are just lead generation sources for the author, meaning they've put this book out there. All it does is give really, really basic details you could have gotten from a handful of blog posts, and then it constantly references their website or other resources and gets you to sign up with them. So it's just a lead gen tool used by these authors. That's no fun at all, and that's certainly not the direction I would want to go. It still brings up the question of what's a good length for a book. When you think of writing a book, I'm sure if you have any sort of respect for yourself as an author, you want it to be quality. And that fear of quality is a form of perfection and will keep you down, keep you procrastinating, not writing that book. The fear of failure, other people are just going to say, this isn't very good, and give you 3 stars or whatever it might be. And that fear of failure, the fear of good quality, really keeps people from not writing. And there's other people who really don't care, and they write a lead gen book. Now, what's happened is I do have a book written in 5 days. And the thing of it is, it's not complete. But is a book ever complete? Meaning there's other things that I want to put in there. So my question to you is, do I go ahead and publish this material and then have it as a series of books? Or do I wait and include it all in one? There are benefits to both, and I'm sure if you're writing a book, you'll come across the same question. As you move along, you get to a deadline, so to speak, the 5 days, and what you produce could be put into a book, especially a 50 and 60 page length, and it could be out there, and you could write more of those. In the process, you will learn an intense amount, I believe, because a sprint is really good for creatives to do. I think it's important to have that sprint and to create that output and to burn beyond perfection and sometimes just get it out there. But on the other hand, there's so much more to include. There's so much more there. And again, you get into the quality and perfection part of it, which gets into, did you finish your book? I did finish the book. But did I finish the book I wanted to write? Or did I just finish a book that I wrote in 5 days? I don't know. And so I'm going to be putting it together. I'm going to be synthesizing it and making a decision on, do I publish what I have, or do I keep going and write a longer book? Now, would I do it again? Definitely, I would do it again. The thing of it is, I think the sprints, again, are really good, and it is a learning process. It really got me to synthesize my ideas and see where I was weak and where I was strong in the content I already had and the content I wanted to include. It brought up so many different questions I didn't have unless I moved forward with the writing process. So it's definitely good to sprint, and I highly recommend doing it, especially because you can do it for free. For 5 days, just put yourself through this intense rigor and see where it leads you. Experimentation is always going to help you propel your creativity forward. So I do highly recommend, of course, there's a link below to get Jarvis or to sign up for the series. But regardless, there are other tools out there as well. But regardless, what it does is it gets you to think in a different way, and it pops out that book that you are working on and really puts it in a new light, and you work on it in a different way. And that's important. You come at your book from a different angle. And I think that angle is important for refreshing your interest in the book and also the possibility of actually finishing it. Now, Jarvis isn't for everyone, which is why there's a free trial. But by having the book in mind when you do that free trial, that target is going to get you to put Jarvis through its paces. And that's really important. You need to have an outcome when you go through this free trial. You need to look for a goal so that you'll push through Jarvis through the paces and see if it's going to be for you. It's not for everybody, but for those it is, it works wonders. One of the ways to jumpstart this whole thing is not only having a goal, but using the recipes. Recipes are really important because otherwise, you can get lost in all the possibilities that Jarvis has in terms of templates to use and so on. And you need to bounce back between, power mode and templates and recipes in order to get ideally to the output you want. But it's important to have a goal when you go and use the free trial with Jarvis. When you do this, again, you put Jarvis through its paces. You not only get output, but you also have to answer the question, is Jarvis going to work for me or not? You will know by the end of the free trial if you are focused. Use recipes, and go for a goal by the end of the 5 days. You will know if Jarvis will fit your needs or not. I have some more videos coming challenging Jarvis in a similar fashion and coming up with some ideas on what happened. If you like this video, you'll definitely like those. You want to sign up for the series below or subscribe or both so you can get the recipe and more. So thanks a lot for watching. If you found this video helpful, give it a like, and I'll see you next time.